The Second Chance Train, A Journey to the Self. Episode 1. Lost, like Dante at the start of the Divine Comedy. A fine drizzle fell from the sky, as if the heavens were weary of a day as gray as Miguel's life. At 38, he wandered aimlessly through the deserted city streets, the weight of unemployment and a recent divorce pressing down on every step. The cobblestones glistened under the amber glow of streetlights, reflecting fragments of a life he no longer recognized. Miguel shoved his hands into the pockets of his worn-out coat, shielding himself from the icy wind that seemed to mock his solitude. He had long lost count of the resumes he had sent out and the rejections he had received. His marriage, once a sanctuary, had become yet another bitter memory of something he couldn't save. Unconsciously, his feet carried him to the old train station, decommissioned years ago. The station echoed his childhood, a place he visited with his father to watch trains thunder by. It was there he had once dreamed of journeys and adventures, long before reality had stolen those daydreams. The building, with its peeling paint and shattered windows, seemed forsaken by time. Miguel sighed, considering returning home, but a sudden sound froze him in place, the whistle of a train. He turned to the tracks and, to his astonishment, saw an old train car slowly approaching the platform. The train shouldn't have been there. The tracks had been out of service for years. Yet he could feel the faint tremor of the ground beneath his feet as the locomotive came to a halt with a metallic groan. The train doors slid open, inviting him in. Miguel shivered as a chill ran down his spine. It felt like an invitation, or a calling. Episode 2. The Choice to Board. Miguel hesitated, his feet rooted to the ground. "This is madness," he muttered to himself, but an inexplicable force drew him closer. He climbed the steps of the carriage, each uncertain stride pulling him further from the reality he knew. Inside, the air was warm and comforting, a stark contrast to the chill outside. Standing before him was a tall man in a pristine uniform, his piercing gaze seeming to penetrate beyond the surface. The conductor extended a blank ticket and spoke in a voice that was both commanding and soothing. "Everyone who boards this train is searching for something they've lost." Miguel took the ticket, feeling the weight of those words settle deep within him. The train gave a slight jolt, as though it, too, was waiting for his final decision. He glanced at the conductor, then at the empty seats stretching out before him. With a heavy breath, he sat down, surrendering himself to the unknown. What Miguel couldn't have known was that stepping onto this mysterious train would mark the beginning of a profound journey filled with reflections and revelations. Nor could he have foreseen that the train would make 4 enigmatic stops, each one unveiling the stories of passengers whose lives carried deep lessons about challenges, choices, and the very essence of human existence. At every stop, Miguel would meet a different traveler, each with a unique narrative shedding light on universal truths. These encounters would act as mirrors, revealing hidden facets of Miguel's own life and inspiring the changes he so desperately needed. Each story would become a piece of the puzzle, guiding him toward rediscovery, healing, and the courage to embrace his second chance. Episode 3. First Stop, The Dreamer Who Gave Up. The train slowed to a gentle stop, the motion barely perceptible until Miguel felt the faint jolt of its arrival. Outside, a rusted sign swayed in the wind, bearing the name of the Station of Lost Dreams. Miguel peered through the window, but the view offered little. Only a swirling, nebulous fog, as though the world beyond was suspended in uncertainty. The doors hissed open, and a young man stepped aboard, clutching a large portfolio brimming with papers and canvases. He seemed no older than his early 20s, his eyes weary but glinting with a spark of suppressed creativity. The young man sat across from Miguel, who watched him silently, curiosity etched across his face. After a moment, the young man opened his portfolio, carefully extracting his works. They were incomplete paintings, sketches of extraordinary talent, their potential left unrealized. Miguel couldn't contain his intrigue. "Are you a painter?" he asked. The young man hesitated, his gaze shifting before he replied, "I was. Or, I tried to be. I always wanted to paint, but I never managed to finish anything." The fear of failing was stronger than the will to keep going. Miguel studied the canvases again. Despite their unfinished state, each held something remarkable, as if they whispered of stories left untold. Picking one up delicately, he asked, "Why didn't you finish them? These have so much potential." The young man sighed, his eyes dropping to the floor. "Every time I started, I thought I'd never be good enough. If it wasn't perfect, what was the point? So, I stopped. I put everything away, thinking it was better that way. But now, all I have are fragments of dreams that never came to life." A lump formed in Miguel's throat. He saw himself in this young man. The abandoned projects, the paths not taken, the dreams he'd let slip through his fingers. Struggling to hide his own emotions, he asked, "And if you'd kept going, what do you think would have happened?" The young man's lips curled into a faint, bittersweet smile. "Maybe I would have failed, but at least I would have tried. That's what hurts the most. Not knowing." Before Miguel could respond, the train whistled softly, signaling its departure. The young man stood, leaving one of his unfinished canvases beside Miguel. "Take this," he said. "Maybe you can finish something I couldn't." He stepped off the train, disappearing into the mist. Miguel sat there, the canvas resting on his lap, the young man's words echoing in his mind. It's better to fail trying than to never try at all. With the weight of the lesson settling in his heart, Miguel clutched the painting tightly, resolved to confront his own lost dreams. Episode 4. Second stop. The woman who lost love. The train slowed once more, its rhythm gentler now, as if mindful of the story it was about to reveal. Miguel peered out the window and saw a desolate landscape unfold. A barren field dotted with gnarled trees and a solitary bench beneath an ancient oak. A rusted sign swayed in the breeze, its words etched with melancholy. The station of unspoken words. The doors opened, and an elderly woman climbed aboard, moving with the deliberate care of someone carrying a lifetime of burdens. In her hands, she held a small wooden box, worn but carefully kept. Her eyes, deep and weary, shimmered with a sadness only years could carve. She settled beside Miguel, placing the box gently on her lap. Miguel remained silent, sensing that words weren't necessary. After a moment, the woman turned to him and offered a faint, wistful smile. "My name is Clara," she said. "This box holds what's left of my heart." She opened it, revealing a bundle of letters, their yellowed pages fragile with age. Miguel leaned closer, drawn by the quiet intimacy of the moment, as Clara lifted one letter with trembling fingers. "I wrote these to the great love of my life," she began, her voice steady but laced with regret. "Every word, every line, was a piece of me, but I never had the courage to send them." Miguel studied the elegant handwriting, noticing the care and emotion in each stroke. Clara continued, her gaze distant. "I loved him more than anything, but pride is a cruel trap. Every time we argued, I waited for him to come to me first. Every time he hesitated, I hardened my heart. And so, the years passed, and silence replaced what might have been." Her eyes drifted beyond the confines of the train, as though searching for something long gone. "He married, had children, and I stayed here, with these letters unsent. In them are my regrets, my vulnerability, the pieces of myself I was too afraid to show." Miguel felt a pang deep within, her words awakening echoes of his own unspoken truths. In a hushed voice, he asked, "What do you think would have happened if you'd sent just one of them?" Clara's lips curved into a bittersweet smile. "Perhaps I would have lived the love I dreamed of. Or perhaps my heart would have been broken. But anything would have been better than the emptiness of never knowing." The train's whistle sounded softly, signaling its departure. Clara stood, leaving one letter on the seat beside Miguel. "Take this," she said. "Let it remind you. Love is worth the risk of vulnerability." She stepped off the train and vanished into the fog, leaving Miguel with a letter and a lesson that cut straight to his soul. Silence may feel safe, but it can be the cruelest prison of all. Clutching the letter, Miguel vowed to confront the unspoken words in his own life before it was too late. Episode 5. Third stop. The man who never forgave. The train slowed again, its pace unhurried, as though hesitant to reach its next destination. Through the window, Miguel saw an abandoned station cloaked in ivy and silence, bathed in the dim, unchanging light of eternal dusk. A rusted sign swung in the faint breeze, bearing the words, "The Station of Lost Time." The doors opened, and an elderly man stepped aboard. His movements were slow and labored, as if weighed down by an invisible burden. In his hand, he held a small, antique pocket watch with a cracked glass face. He took a seat near Miguel, who couldn't suppress his curiosity. "Nice watch," Miguel ventured, breaking the silence. The man lifted his gaze, offering a weary smile. His voice, deep yet tinged with sorrow, carried the weight of untold years. "It was my brother's. The only thing he left behind when he was gone." Miguel frowned, intrigued. "Did he pass a long time ago?" The man nodded, running his fingers over the cracked glass. 20 years. 20 long years. We had a stupid argument, like so many siblings do. But that day, I told him I'd never forgive him. He tried to reach out after that, letters, calls, but I was too stubborn, too proud." He paused, his gaze drifting to some unseen past. "Then, one day I got a message. He'd passed suddenly. A heart attack. There wasn't time for a goodbye or an apology. Just this watch." In the silence, Miguel felt the air grow heavier, the man's story pressing on him like a tangible force. "And you couldn't forgive yourself?" he asked softly. The man let out a sorrowful chuckle, holding up the pocket watch. "This watch stopped on the exact day he died. I think it's a reminder that time doesn't rewind. I was a prisoner of my resentment, only to realize too late that forgiveness isn't for the other person. It's for yourself." The train's whistle blew, announcing its departure. The man rose slowly, placing the watch on the seat beside Miguel. "Keep it," he said. "Let it remind you not to make the same mistake." As he stepped off the train into the stillness of the station, Miguel watched him fade into the twilight. Holding the pocket watch in his hands, Miguel felt the lesson etch itself into his soul. Forgiveness frees the one who forgives more than the one who is forgiven. He stared at the stopped hands of the watch, determined to face the unresolved conflicts in his life before time slipped away. Episode 6. Fourth stop, The Forgotten Child. The train glided smoothly to its next halt, and Miguel felt a shift in the air, a gentle warmth and a soft breeze that carried the scent of fresh grass and sunshine. Through the window, he glimpsed a vibrant field bathed in golden sunlight, where swings swayed, kites soared, and the sound of distant laughter filled the air. A hand-painted sign greeted him, "Sanctuary of Lost Childhood." As the doors slid open, a young girl bounded into the carriage, radiating boundless energy. She wore a floral dress, her hair tied in playful braids, and clutched a tattered sketchbook in her small hands. Without hesitation, she plopped down in the seat opposite Miguel, her exuberance a stark contrast to his reserved demeanor. "Hi, want to see my drawings?" she asked, her smile so bright it seemed to light up the entire train. Miguel, caught off guard, nodded hesitantly. "Sure. What have you drawn?" She flipped open her sketchbook, revealing a colorful jumble of castles, creatures, and whimsical worlds. She stopped at a drawing of a castle floating among clouds and pointed proudly. "This is where all my dreams live. I visit whenever I want to feel happy." "But you haven't been drawing in your dream book, have you?" Miguel blinked, startled. "My dream book?" She nodded with childlike certainty. "Everyone has one, but some people forget where they left it. You haven't drawn in yours for a long time, right?" He lowered his gaze, her innocent observation stirring something deep within him. How long had it been since he'd allowed himself to dream freely? Memories surfaced, of his plans to write a novel, to travel the world, to embrace life with joy and spontaneity. Those dreams now felt like relics of another life, tucked away and forgotten. "I think I stopped drawing a long time ago," he admitted softly. "Life made me forget how." The girl giggled, the sound pure and infectious. "That's silly. You can start again right now. Here, use my book." She tore out a blank page and handed it to Miguel along with a colorful pencil. "Draw what you really want," she urged. "Something that makes you happy." Miguel hesitated, the pencil feeling unfamiliar in his hand. But as he looked into her encouraging eyes, a long-dormant spark reignited within him. Slowly, he began to sketch. Line by line, he created a picture of himself sitting on a serene beach, surrounded by books and friends, free from the burdens of guilt and regret. When he finished, the girl clapped her hands, her delight uncontainable. "I knew you could still draw. Don't ever forget this again. We grow up, but we can't stop dreaming." The train let out a soft whistle, signaling its departure. The girl stood, beaming at Miguel as she waved goodbye. "See you. I hope you visit the Castle of Dreams again someday." She darted out of the train, vanishing into the sunlit field as Miguel watched her go. Left holding the sketch and pencil, he felt an unexpected lightness in his chest. The girl's words lingered in his mind, echoing with newfound clarity. It's never too late to reclaim the innocence and dreams of your past. For the first time in years, Miguel felt the courage to imagine a future filled with hope and possibility. Scene 7. Miguel's choice. The train slowed down one final time, and Miguel sensed that this stop was unlike the others. Outside the window, there were no misty landscapes or sunlit fields. Instead, he was faced with an endless, dark mirror reflecting the train's interior, and more profoundly, himself. A shiver ran down his spine as the train came to a halt, eerily silent and devoid of any station or signposts. The conductor appeared without a sound, emerging as though from the shadows of the carriage. His calm yet enigmatic gaze met Miguel's, and he spoke in a voice that resonated deeply. "This is the last stop. The choice is yours. Disembark and begin anew, or stay aboard and linger with your memories and pain." Miguel looked at the conductor, words escaping him for a moment. The lessons from each prior stop flooded his mind. The young painter, the woman with unsent letters, the man and his shattered clock, and the child with her sketchbook of dreams. The weight of those encounters was heavy, yet each carried a glimmer of hope. "What happens if I leave?" Miguel finally asked, his voice barely audible. The conductor's lips curved into a faint smile, full of understanding. "If you leave, there are no guarantees. Life will remain unpredictable, filled with challenges and uncertainties. But it will also offer infinite possibilities." Miguel glanced down at his hands, now holding the painter's unfinished canvas, the elderly woman's letter, the broken clock, and the child's drawing. Each item symbolized something lost, yet they also held a promise, a chance to rebuild, to reclaim. "And if I stay?" he asked, his voice trembling. The conductor clasped his hands in front of him. "Then you will remain a prisoner of your memories and sorrow. This train doesn't move forward. It only circles through the same paths, through the same pain." A single tear slid down Miguel's cheek, the weight of the truth bearing down on him. He had always known the answer, but summoning the courage to act felt insurmountable. After a moment that felt like an eternity, he inhaled deeply, stood, and looked at the conductor with newfound determination. "I'll leave. I don't know what awaits me, but I can't keep living like this." The conductor nodded, stepping aside to clear Miguel's path. With hesitant steps, Miguel walked toward the door. As his foot touched the ground outside, a warm, gentle light enveloped him. Suddenly, he found himself back at the old station where his journey had begun. Yet everything seemed different now, brighter, more vivid, more alive. Reaching into his coat pocket, Miguel discovered a folded piece of paper written in his own handwriting. "The train will always be here, but life happens beyond it. Begin again, Miguel." A genuine smile crept across his face, perhaps the first in years. Holding on to the lessons he had gathered, Miguel stepped forward into the sunlight, embracing the uncertainty of the world ahead with hope in his heart. Scene 8. The new journey. Miguel stepped off the train, feeling the soft caress of a gentle breeze against his face. The sunlight was warmer, more inviting than he remembered. The once desolate and abandoned station was now alive with vibrant colors. The brick walls exuded untold stories. The windows reflected a world brimming with possibilities, and the air carried the crispness of a new beginning. Sliding his hand into his pocket, he felt the familiar texture of the letter. He unfolded it and read the words again. "The train will always be here, but life happens beyond it. Begin again." Miguel. Each word resonated deeply, imbued with the weight and wisdom of his journey. Looking toward the horizon, Miguel realized he was no longer alone. The station was more than just a place of arrivals and departures. It was a crossroads of stories, each person carrying their hopes and struggles like he did. Taking a deep breath, Miguel savored the sense of the moment. The earthy freshness of damp ground, the faint aroma of distant flowers, and the metallic tang of the old tracks. Clutched in his hands were the artifacts of his journey. The painter's unfinished canvas, the elderly woman's unsent letter, the broken clock of the man burdened by anger, and the drawing from the child of forgotten dreams. These were no longer mere objects. They were symbols of the lessons he had gathered. He began walking toward the city ahead, a renewed energy surging through him. Each step was steadier than the last, infused with purpose. Miguel understood now that a new beginning didn't have to be monumental or immediate. The act of taking that first step was enough. The rest would follow in its own time. As he moved forward, he noticed a child drawing with colorful chalk on the sidewalk. She looked up and smiled, her bright eyes mirroring the playful spirit of the little girl he had met on the train. Miguel returned the smile, a warmth spreading through his chest, reminding him that his inner child still lived within him, waiting to dream again. The world wasn't perfect, but it was expansive and filled with opportunities. Miguel accepted that challenges would come, but he also knew he had the strength and determination to face them. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive. And so, Miguel moved forward, not as the man who had boarded the train, but as someone who had embraced the choice to write his own story. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share it with those who would benefit from its inspiring lessons. We have many more stories like this on our channel. Click on the next video appearing on your screen and let yourself be captivated by another emotional and inspiring tale.